Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week, we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now, here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Siriani.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Siriani, and my special guest today is Kathy Edmons. Kathy is the Senior Cloud Program Director at Teradata Corporation, a multi-billion-dollar technology company. And as an executive, Kathy is passionate about improving the customer experience. Her motto is think strategically, execute tactically. And when she isn't orchestrating moving customers to Teradata's IntelliCloud infrastructure, her other passion is serving as the president of the Women of Teradata. It's a nonprofit organization that provides professional development opportunities to women, as well as opportunities to contribute to the communities they live in. So welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Donna, so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. And so, Kathy, as I just mentioned, I know you're passionate about improving the customer experience, and I'd love to hear more about that. But what came to mind about this was to do it really requires that you get your voice heard and that you have a seat at the table to influence decision making. So I'd love to know, what are your thoughts on this? What's been your experience?
Yeah, this is a great question. Thanks, Donna. Well, really improving the customer experience. Well, first, let's talk about that, and then we can talk about how do you get a seat at the table. So really to focus on the customer, everything else follows if you focus on the customer in terms of retention, additional subscription revenue, upsell revenue, etc. And Teradata customers today, they use our solution to make key decisions in their businesses, and they really rely on mission-critical system availability. They've got thousands of users, lots of applications, millions of queries, and they really can't tolerate much downtime. So when a rare and unfortunate event occurs, we put all hands on deck to provide the best and brightest technical minds to get to resolution. But improving the customer experience really is more than just reacting to events. It's about listening to what customers are asking for, and it's about preventing events from occurring in the first place. You can build software with sensors in it to take proactive action before an event occurs. And you can build the ability to get a 360-degree view of the customer and put some key performance indicators in place, such as Net Promoter Score, incident resolution time, survey data, anecdotal data, to get in front of potential dissatisfiers and provide an improved customer experience. But even for customers that are completely satisfied, you're going to want to provide additional process improvements, training, customer forums, so that the services you're delivering can be executed better the next time. So think about it. So today you can Google anything, and customers really want to find solutions quicker and learn best practices on their own, but focus on improving their experience even when you're not in a crisis. So be in touch with them on a regular basis when there aren't crises and help become a trusted advisor to them. And then they'll reach out to you with new questions and new ways of delivering services or solutions. But to get a seat at the table, interestingly enough, in prepping for this conversation, I listened to Susie Welch, and she also talked about that you really have to earn a seat at the table. And to earn the seat at the table, you have to have good ideas, good wisdom, good data, come prepared to meetings. And that's why customer experience is super critical, because a lot of engineers here at Teradata, they don't have that customer experience. So to get a seat at the table, it's really earned with your ideas, your results, your creativity. But you have to be able to voice those things in these meetings. So not only do you have to have your homework done, but you also have to be able to be prepared to speak. And so one of the things I thought was great about some of our conversations that we've had, Donna, is that you've told me, make it a point when you're in one of these strategic discussions to have something to say in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting, or decide that you're going to contribute 5 key points during the meeting and then do it, execute. So come prepared with data, come prepared with how you'll contribute, what value you'll add to the discussion, and then set those goals of when you'll speak and how often. And bringing customer data and analysis, this gives you really credibility. And often in a room full of engineers, they won't have that customer data. But most of all, really speak up with your great ideas.
And Kathy, thank you for bringing in the Susie Welch. Just for anybody listening, I interviewed Susie Welch, and that was one of the early podcasts. So if you look at iTunes, you'll see the Susie Welch interview. And, Kathy, I love what you're saying because many people want their voices heard, but what I love how you've recapped that you really have to earn it and you have to have the ideas, show that you can get results, bring your creativity. And, it's amazing to me how often I speak with a really successful leader like yourself. Many, many leaders who you'd be surprised still are a little bit shy about speaking up in those meetings. And they may be absorbed with listening and the discussion, but they don't necessarily go into the meeting with a proactive idea of what they want to share. So thank you for sharing that. And one of the things in terms of customer experience, I also love what you said about so many people, especially in a large corporate environment, they don't have access to the customer. So I heard you say, engineers often don't get to work directly with the customer, the kind of couple steps, couple degrees removed. So what advice would you have for somebody who really does want to get more either hands-on or just more insight into the customer experience? What advice would you have for them?
Well, interestingly enough, and also in prepping for this call, because I came with data, so I followed my own advice, I met with three young engineers. I met with 3 young engineers and I asked them about their challenges today in the workforce. And so, some of our teams here at Teradata, there's a pretty good ratio of men to women. It's maybe 1 woman to 3 men. And sometimes it's even more than 50% are women in the team. And then sometimes it's only 1 woman and 15 men. So what can happen, unfortunately, is that you've got this self-doubt that creeps in these type of situations. Mm-hmm. But what I told these women is what you can do is to get engaged with customers. And there's different ways to get engaged with customers. You can ask to be on the weekly meeting that we have with customers when we're reviewing product features and functionality for the beta testing. You can get involved with benchmarks. There's lots of customer presentations that are held. There's our annual Teradata Partners Conference that you can talk to customers on the exhibit hall floor. So there's lots of ways that you can get engaged with customers, and getting that firsthand experience with customers and hearing how they're using the product and what really is working for them and what isn't is so extremely valuable. And you don't have to take a customer facing role if it doesn't work for you. You can get engaged in all these other ways. We've got a bunch of customers always coming to San Diego. So it's always great to hear what they have to say firsthand.
Yeah, and I love your advice, Kathy. It kind of resonates with me personally because I think I'd shared with you that for many years I actually managed global client operations. And it would have been really easy for us to sit back and assume that we knew what to do next to make the client happy and what specific improvements we could make with respect not just to the product, but in terms of how we improve the client experience. I had a large client contact center and, we have 5,000 calls a month, and we could very easily have sat there at our desk and said, we know just the perfect improvement to make. But I was quite deliberate in going out and meeting with key customers, bringing some of my staff members with me and doing some, as much as the client was willing, some on the spot interviews to see, okay, what do they really want? They don't want to be on the phone with us. They want to do things, at their fingertips so they can multitask. So the experience of really getting to know the client always was an eye opener. So anyway, so I think your advice is super. And I'm just wondering for folks who, you mentioned engineering, ways they can get involved and weekly meetings with customers, benchmarks, annual conferences. Is there anything else that you're seeing? You kind of piqued my curiosity because you mentioned the ratio of some of the groups of women to men. And you are also president of the organization Women of Teradata. So I'm curious to know, what are some of the challenges that you see that are most common?
Yeah, that's a great question, Donna. So some of the challenges that I see that are the most common, and like I said, I did my homework. I met with these 3 young women, and I wanted to see if they were some of the same challenges that I had early in my career. So one of them is just lack of self-confidence and self-doubt kind of creeping in. Another really is, we've talked about it a little bit, is really finding your voice and having something to say. And the third really is about work-life balance.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So I guess one of the things I just want to mention in terms of lack of confidence, and this is something I've got I have a personal passion about around, helping people establish their confidence, raise their confidence. It starts with knowing what you're good at, knowing what your strengths are. Because so often, and Kathy, you and I probably both fall into this every so often, sometimes what comes naturally to you that you're really good at, you take for granted. And yet when a person can, in fact, they could go back to one of my earlier episodes, one of the first emotional intelligence episodes where I talk about self-regard. And one of the keys and sort of underpinnings to success and growing your self-confidence is knowing what are your strengths? What are you good at? Because chances are that's what everybody most appreciates about you. So anyway, I just needed to sort of put that in there. So I'm curious, of these 3 different issues, are there any strategies or tactics that you could recommend given how active you've been in your own internal network?
Yeah, so in terms of self-doubt and lack of confidence, so when you're in this ratio, as I was talking about earlier, with 1 woman to several men, sometimes it's difficult to get your voice heard in those kinds of conversations. And women, we tend to really think about or overanalyze, should I say this here? Or should I make a point there? And what you need to recognize is that you're the only one hearing this voice, and you need to really silence this voice. And when you have relevant ideas, you have to get them out there. Early on in my career, I went to this class called Taking the Stage, and the first module of it was really all about decide that you need to take the stage. And at the time, as many, many years ago, I thought that the work kind of just spoke for itself and that people would recognize that I was doing good work and that I would get promoted as a result. But actually, this class made me realize that I need to represent the work. I need to speak on behalf of it because work doesn't speak. So,
Kathy, I love that. Absolutely love it.
You really need to get your ideas out there, and you need to challenge yourself. Like I said, set those goals, come prepared, and then decide that you're going to contribute, either during the first 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting, or that you're going to make 3 key points throughout the meeting. So silence that voice in your head.
Wonderful. I love it. And I'm curious, where you mentioned work-life balance, I'm curious if at Teradata or, in your San Diego organization, I'm curious, are there any specific things that are underway internally? Just some tips, some ideas in terms of your company culture of what is being done to foster or encourage work-life balance?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at Teradata, we've got some people that do some job sharing. We've got some people that work from home. So there's lots of things that we're doing tactically on work-life balance. But when I talked about this challenge with these 3 young ladies, what they told me about was that sometimes it's a challenge. Their kids come to them and say, how come you don't volunteer at school? And so one of the parents, which I thought was really great advice, she told her daughter, look, I contribute in other ways. I contribute financially, and I don't have, unfortunately, the ability to invest my time, but I invest my dollars. And once she did that with her daughter understood. But the other thing you need to do really is to tell people, just because I'm a mom, it doesn't mean that I stop at 5 p.m., that you can do calls late at night after everybody's put to bed, or you can do work late at night if it's important to you. So what you really need to determine, and one of the things I loved working with you, Donna, was that you had a program where you thought about your career, your life, and you have to decide what's really important to you. So to decide if that 8 o'clock call is worth doing. And then you need to make sure others understand, just because, like I said, you're a mom, it doesn't mean that you can't do something late at night. But alternately, you have to be able to say no to things that don't really fit in that work-life balance vision that you have for yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really all great advice, Kathy. And one of the podcast interviews I did, maybe it was about a month ago, was with Dr. Sarah Reif-Hecking, and it's a time management focus. She's a time management expert. And one of the things I started doing recently that I wish I had done years ago when I had the global client service hat is to plan the week out a week at a time. Instead of just planning for tomorrow, actually look at the entire week. And, work-life balance has so many connotations. I love what you shared. Now I think to myself, there's things I've learned since becoming a coach that I wish I had known when I was back in the operational roles of how to plan out the week at a whole so that you can see, all right, maybe you're willing to work, late Tuesday and Wednesday, but the other nights are, like you said, Kathy, they might be for family, for school activities, or for downtime to recharge, maybe even personal, passions, but plan it out. Unfortunately for me, I would say for many years, I just defaulted to, I've got to stay late to get it done. I never planned a whole week. I planned for the day and for tomorrow, and it was always a trap to fall into. But then you get into that cycle of it does increase your stress level as the week progresses. And so many of the people that I work with will say to me, oh God, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't have the time to take a step back during the week. And so that's where, if anybody's listening, they're feeling like that time management challenge is really pressing. I encourage you to go and listen to that interview with Sarah Hecking, because she's a time management expert, and there may be some tips there for you. So Kathy, when you look back at your career, what is it you wish you'd know? It was I have to say, it was so fantastic that here you are with all your responsibilities. You took the time to, sit with these three, younger women to find out what's going on with them, what they're finding challenging. When you look back at your own career, what do you wish you'd known earlier?
Oh, that's a great question. So I remember a time at the start of my career that I asked a male colleague in my organization about a job in his department. And I asked him if he thought I was qualified. And he said to me, I think you can do anything. And I looked at him like he was crazy. What are you talking about? I can do anything. I went to school for accounting, and that's what I'm going to spend my career doing. But 20 years later, it really took me to realize he was right. I can do anything. And at Teradata, I've done a lot of different roles. I've been in product management and finance and program management, engineering, customer support, and now I'm in our cloud organization, which is a very strategic business opportunity for Teradata. But I wish I had realized early on that I could really do anything, and I wish I had taken more risks earlier in my career and got that customer experience. So really, a customer-facing role where you can travel and be available for customers before I settle down too much. And then even with that experience, let's say I didn't like it. One of the things that I think is really important to understand is that what's the worst that can happen? You can always change. You can always go back to your, original discipline, even if you don't like something, especially when you're early on in your career. There's just so many opportunities.
And, it's interesting, Kathy, that you're mentioning that. So you've made a lot of changes in your career. You've zigzagged to some different functions. What allowed you to zigzag like that?
Well, I think for me, what allowed me to zigzag was I always focused on my core strengths, which is something I learned from you. So I've always taken kind of my analysis bend to everything and really tried to understand the business I was in. In every department, there's a business. Really understand the key objectives of that business and see how I can make it better. But what really allowed me to do all those shifts in my career was people that believed in me. So I kept proving myself in these new roles, and they kept giving me roles in other disciplines because they believed in me. I might not have been the best fit, but they knew that I cared enough to make a difference, and that I would take those core skill sets that they had seen me execute on in other roles and apply them to the new role. I love learning. So that's, I love learning new things and being challenged. It would make me crazy to do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, and what I love about what you're saying, Kathy, is that you had these muscles, things you're really good at, learning, being analytical, great with customers and so on, but you took those strengths, those core strengths, into every new opportunity that you encountered. And sometimes I'll have people ask me, or they'll share with me that they're trying to decide between position A and position B, and like which one is the perfect role, or they're thinking about a job search and wondering, which role should I go after? And you just sort of illustrated, I think, a really key point is that you can do many different roles. The question is, how will you use your strengths?
Right.
Is the role going to take advantage of what you're good at? And there's lots of different things you can do. There's no one right job for anybody. So I love your experience, the fact that you've zigzagged like that. And I also love that you shared a tactic for risk taking, because that is the ultimate question to ask. If I take this role, any self-doubt, you take a risk, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
The worst that can happen is you learn some new things, get some great experience, meet new people. The worst that can happen is you realize that path isn't your best fit and you do something else.
Exactly. especially when you're early in your career, there's so many opportunities to do so many different things that you can take that risk.
Yeah, you can take that risk, definitely. Oh, I love that. So, Kathy, if somebody's listening who would like to, reach out to you and find out more, I mean, improving the customer experience is such a fantastic topic. If somebody would love to follow up with you, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, Donna, the best way really to connect with me would be on LinkedIn.
Great. It's Kathleen Edmons.
Right.
And so Kathy, thank you so much for your time today. I really could keep you longer because there's lots more questions I'd love to ask you. But, what I'd like to say to anyone listening is if you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you can receive the weekly episodes. Just go to thesuccesstalkshow.com or iTunes and click on subscribe. And if you'd like to receive weekly videos with helpful tips on accelerating your success, just jump over to YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just look for Donna Sirianni. So anyway, thank you for listening and have a great day.